Okay, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us today. And I'd now like to talk to you about 10 frequently asked market research questions. And just to put this session into context, we're talking about what are the questions that new market researchers or researchers who are new to a topic have, and especially the sort of questions that aren't easily answered by textbooks and other resources. So our first frequently asked question is, what are insights? Now, the term insights means different things to different people. Insights may be expressed with less precision than data, but they should always convey or communicate a message. And if you want to think about this generally, an insight should advise a client what they should do. For example, launch the product, or it should enable the client to make a decision. Frequently asked question number 2, what are the main methods of collecting data? The methods of survey data collection vary in popularity in different markets. For example, in North America, online surveys via access panels are the most frequently used method, whereas in many other markets, face-to-face interviewer-administered surveys are much more common. Now, the SMR Global Market Research Report provides an example of the total split between methods and the split within countries based on the proportion of spend. If we have a look at some of the 2010 data here, we can see that 29% of surveys by spend are conducted online, 20% by telephone, 16% by face-to-face research, 5% postal, and another 30% is mostly non-survey data collection methods. Now, this is an often asked, frequently asked question that we've numbered at 3. How long should a questionnaire be? And the basic answer is questionnaires should be as short as possible. And longer surveys tend to reduce cooperation rates, and the quality of responses tend to decline after a certain point in the survey. However, very importantly, too long is a contextual term. Questionnaires that have a very engaging style, questionnaires that deal with very interesting topics, can often afford to be longer than surveys about less engaging topics. It's also very important to consider your sample source. Surveys that are conducted with members of online access panels can afford to be longer than surveys that are conducted with fresh respondents, for example, people who may be drawn from a client's database. The modality of the survey will also impact on the maximum length that you can consider. For example, if a respondent's interrupted during his or her day, for example, if they're interrupted by an interviewer in the street, the survey needs to be shorter, whereas a pre-arranged interview can be a little longer. The best advice about the maximum length for a specific questionnaire will come from the people who are most familiar with the sample source, for example, from the online access provider. However, as a rough guide, you can use a rule of thumb that no more than 20 minutes in length for an online access panel, and surveys with everybody else should be no more than 12 or 15 minutes at a maximum. Question number 4. What is the main aim of qualitative analysis? The main aim of qualitative analysis is to reduce the complexity of the information generated in the qualitative research process, to turn these into ideas and messages which are meaningful for the client. Although data reduction is by no means the only aim, it's the researcher's task to translate the consumer's words, ideas and behaviours into the language of business or government, while helping the client to see the issue from the perspective of the consumer. If you're interested in this topic, this was covered very well by Sue Bell this morning in Training Day Session 1, so you might like to learn some more from that recording when it's available early next week. Frequently asked question number 5 is, Can social media research be used instead of other methods? In some cases, social media research can replace other research. In some cases, it can be used where other techniques would struggle, and in many cases, it can't replace traditional research. The key point about social media research is that it is limited to what is already being discussed in social media. So things like hypothetical issues, experiments such as the comparative evaluation of two concepts, issues that require probing, and most things that are not in the public domain are difficult or impossible to access via social media research. Surveys are good at focusing on representative samples, whereas social media research's strength lies in listening to a massive range of people from all walks of life all around the world. And while focus groups allow you to dig deep into the perceptions and opinions of individual people, social media research allows you to gather opinions from thousands or millions of people. If the research objective requires historical consumer opinions, tracking opinions instantly, or gathering more variables than is possible with other research methods, social media research may be the method of choice, although you always need to remember that social media can only research by looking at naturally occurring comments or conversations. And Annie Pettit will be giving us some useful advice in a session after me, looking more at social media research. FAQ number 6. Can we join online communities to gather research information? Now, while there is a debate about precisely what publicly available online information can be accessed, used and reported, there is little doubt that market researchers should not falsely sign up to communities, lurk, observe, or gather information for their clients without seeking to announce themselves and to ask for permission. Door-to-door researchers would not pose as health workers in order to trick their way into people's homes to secretly gather information for their clients. Similarly, a researcher should not pretend to be sick or pretend to be a mother to join communities like Patients Like Me or Mumsnet for the purposes of gathering information. And in an earlier session today, Ray Pointer talked about MROCs in some detail, so that is another session you might like to catch up on if you missed it earlier. Frequently asked question number 7 is, does behavioural economics suggest that market research does not work? Behavioural economics has become very fashionable in market research circles in the last couple of years. Some of the interest has been generated because it's been suggested that asking people questions is fruitless because people are not privy to their own beliefs and motivations. Whilst it may be true that behavioural economics reminds researchers of the problems of order effects, framing and anchoring, context, and asking people to rationalise emotional or unconscious decisions, most of this has been known for many years, and good research has always sought to deal with this. Behavioural economics may offer reasons for market researchers to review their methods and to change some, but it is not a major challenge to research as we know it today. And if you would like to learn more about behavioural economics, there's a session from Training Day Session 1 in which Bree Williams gives quite a detailed account of behavioural economics. So if you're interested in that area, I'd encourage you to catch that one on the Play Again system. Frequently asked question number 8. Why is interest in ethnography growing? Ethnography is not new, but in recent years it has become a topic of increased interest. The growth has been driven by two main factors. Firstly, the availability of easy-to-use, low-cost video recording devices, which has resulted in ethnographies that are much more impactful when presented to end-user clients. And secondly, a growing need amongst clients to get deeper than traditional qualitative and quantitative research will allow. Ethnography is the study of people's lives in situ. The main tool of the ethnographer is observation. This stands in contrast with many other forms of market research, which are based on questions or discussions. An example of an ethnography might be a project to understand the use of fresh and prepared foods in the preparation and consumption of home meals. The ethnographer would arrange to spend time hanging out with families in the run-up to and the consumption of meals. Video recordings and the like are the ethnographic data. It is the analysis and writing up of the material that is the ethnography. Ethnography tends to cost more and take longer than many other types of research. This means that it tends to be used when other techniques are unlikely to answer the research questions. The growth of interest in and evidence from behavioural economics and neuroscience have helped show which activities are best reached via observation. Netnography is the extension of ethnography into the world of online lives. Netnography might mean, for example, joining an online community and exploring people's lives through their online interactions. Frequently asked question number 9. What are prediction markets? Prediction markets are based on the ideas articulated in the book The Wisdom of Crowds by James Surowiecki and made popular by the Iowa electronic markets. The idea behind prediction markets is that people are better at predicting other people's behaviour than their own. The market element of the test refers to the way that participants are encouraged to trade their options. For example, a series of new concepts could be presented as options for which the participants are offered shares. The participants would then sell their shares in one or more concepts and buy shares in others. One of the key benefits that is claimed for prediction markets is they remove the need to conduct research with a representative sample of buyers. And frequently asked question number 10, what areas are the most sensitive in terms of best practice? The most sensitive areas are online research generally, including techniques like netnography and self-administered questionnaires, social media research, mobile research, and neuromarketing. Technology develops much more quickly than the law, so what can be done is not always what may be done. Legislators around the world are currently working very hard to align their legal positioning on the internet, e-privacy, and data protection. Please be especially careful when proposing work in these 3 areas. SMR has guidelines for all of them, and you should also see what guidelines your local association has, if this is applicable. The best policy, if you are in doubt in any of these areas, is to ask. Another major area of concern is research that relates to children. While there is a general desire to protect children from both harm and exploitation, there is a confusing array of guidelines and laws from country to country. Even the definition of what a child is varies by country, and to a lesser extent by business sector. For example, in most countries, the age at which alcohol-related research can be conducted is different from the age at which chocolate-related research can be conducted. So that takes us through our 10 frequently asked questions, but I wonder if you've got more questions. If you have, you can and you should talk to your colleagues, see if you can get a mentor, attend as many training courses as you possibly can, read books, articles and conference papers on the areas that you're working in, the areas that you're interested in, and the areas that you have questions about. There are also lots of resources that you can access from various industry associations. And you can also take the opportunity to continue learning from NewMR. The hyperlinks below will be available when you download the slides. You can use the first one to sign up for updates from NewMR so you can keep abreast of our events. If you follow the #NewMR tag on Twitter, you will be able to see what's going on. You'll see links to blogs and articles from other people who are interested in NewMR, and that will be a great source of learning. You can also join our NewMR LinkedIn group and join the conversation. But there also will very shortly be a book that is about 10 answers to contemporary market research questions, and in fact there are about 170 more questions than you've seen today in that book. The book's being produced as part of SMR's 65th birthday celebrations, and there'll be more announcements shortly about exact dates that will be available and how you'll be able to obtain your copy. So I'd like to thank you all very much for joining us today, and if you have any questions, now is the time to tweet them.